Speedo only stream.
A word of sounding like what it represents.
Yeah, I'm aware of what that is, but
the interdependent relationship between water and sound is so fundamental to our connection and understanding of water. The rain patters and drums.
There we go.
The waves roar.
That's a little better.
The brook murmurs and whispers. The puddles of mud squelch. That it is intrinsically woven into the very linguistic code of our
mean,
language.
it was pretty.
Explored the powerful connection between
it was a self-descriptive term.
And his study exploring the impact of sound on the molecular structure of water.
Speedo only stream.
We have those that like
maybe.
to play around with cymatics. There is Peter Davey, a saxophone player who invented a device that boils water with
if the Twitch thoughts can wear their fucking bikini panties
so much so that in
and do
times,
ASMR microphone licking
streams,
streams,
the most resistant of infections
then
and wounds at rapid pace.
I should be allowed to do a
with
Speedo stream.
Innovation. Water, sound, and frequency had to have a major role to play, and of course it did. They wanted us to know they did.
I'll get the
and
mankini.
Not just here on Earth. They were telling us to look up and above. They wanted us to know that what they had achieved right here on Earth was only possible because they had studied what existed above. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters.
Exactly.
And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. Some criticize the King James translation of the Bible for its use of the word firmament.
Yeah, true.
But in the original Hebrew, the word is rakia, which translates directly as firmament. In the New International Version, it is called the vault. In the English Standard Version, it is an expanse. In the Good News translation, it is dome. What is important, however, is that in all translations, and in the original Hebrew, the notion of the firmament...
Yeah, if they can do fucking blowjob ASMR, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Change and remains consistent. There is water.
Although, keep in mind, they don't apply the fucking rules evenly across all content creators.
The telescope is an interesting instrument, both at once an apparatus for discovery and simultaneously a weapon of deceit. There are two primary types of telescope, the refractor and the reflector. A refractor uses an objective lens, usually a convex lens, and a reflector utilizes a single or a combination of curved mirrors to reflect light and form an image. Many reflector telescopes use either a concave mirror or a parabolic mirror. This is what a reflection looks like in these mirrors. The eyes we were born with, and which we see the world through, are convex lenses. We do not witness the world through curved mirror reflections. This is Jupiter, as seen through a reflecting Newtonian telescope.
Yeah.
And despite the slight spherical distortion caused by the reflected mirrors, this is still not what NASA has shown us. Your mind immediately sees a planet, because you have been programmed, since birth, to associate an image like this with the notion of a planet. Just in the same way you associate the moon with a ball of rock by default.
Okay. So tell me. No.
But as you can see here, both refracting and reflecting telescopes produce images similar to the Nikon P900. The Nikon lenses have been criticized by some astronomers as lacking the power to really see the luminaries above. But as you can see here, there is not much difference between the Nikon and both types of telescope. And in each we see that Jupiter is radiating some kind of light of its own. Both amateur and professional astronomers present footage such as this.
No, it's reflecting light, buddy. Light reflects off of things.
But look what happens next.
Okay. And you couldn't capture your screen.
The astronomers here are using imaging processing software to turn their raw images and footage, which display a circular object in the sky above us, radiating its own light, into a NASA-style planet. And this type of doctored, processed image is not what we see with our own eyes.
Or you're just processing your image way longer and it's fucking making the picture clearer.
Through these lenses. I am not saying that this is deliberate deception. Astronomy is a practice of its own. It is very important to never confuse the highly edited images and footage we receive with reality. And it is also worth being mindful of those that are being very manipulative. They are usually the astronomers with the paid sponsorship from magazines and websites. It is also important to note that what we call planets are not actually planets.
Says the man with a Patreon.
Stars, and all of the wandering stars are of a similar nature to the moon. Unlike the rest of the stars above our firmament, their course and journey above us is not fixed and consistent. Their paths deviate from the concentric paths that the rest of the stars consistently make around Polaris.
What?
And the reason for this is because they are not located within the waters beyond the firmament. They are very different, and their function is way more occult, and their significance to life here on Earth much more important than we realize. We will be returning to the true nature of the so-called planets and moon later.
Oh,
Back to the
please,
waters.
please do.
Arcturus is one of the brightest stars in the sky. Here is Science Magazine's artistic impression of the star. And now here is Arcturus as seen through a refracting telescope. There is no resemblance. What we see through this telescope footage is really similar to what we see when you zoom in on the stars above with a powerful Nikon camera. Many criticize the refracting telescope because it can produce chromatic aberration. Chromatic aberration is a failure
Exactly.
of the lens
Like,
to
if
focus
Alex
full color
Jones
to the same
is
point.
saying it's
The
not
result can be
a
purple
fucking
fringing,
real thing.
and we see that here. Photographs can suffer from chromatic aberration. Interestingly, the Nikon does not produce the same chromatic aberration when zooming in on Arcturus. Therefore, you could say that the Nikon is actually more reliable and stable. Through both the telescopic lens and the Nikon, Arcturus is pulsing, shifting, rippling. It is dancing geometry. Many will jump up from their seats and exclaim, it's because of atmospheric distortion and light pollution. It's because Arcturus is so far away.
He
But if
does,
it
he
is atmospheric
does.
distortion, then why do all the
And
stars display their own
goblins.
unique geometry?
Alex
and
Jones
light
believes in
patterns? They should all
goblins.
distort in a unified, consistent manner. It is not atmospheric distortion. The stars are pockets of sonoluminescence in the water above. They are self-illuminating, radiating their own light and frequencies in the waters above. Our own convex lens eyes tell us that there is some kind of water above. We see it in the stars and when rockets accidentally hit the firmament. And, like I said
What?
before, just because the so-called planets or wandering stars and the moon appear spherical does not mean they are. They are not synonymous with the stars in the water beyond. They are something else
When the
entirely.
moon hit, when the...
Our advanced predecessors wanted us to watch the stars. They wanted us to understand that electromagnetic vibration and frequency produce pockets of sonoluminescence in the waters above. They were pointing it out because they wanted us to know that water was the key to unlocking the real potential of electromagnetic energy. They wanted us to know that once harnessed, the ethereal electromagnetic energy could be fused with water, so it could be stored and distributed. And once produced, the water could be manipulated, enhanced, and elevated to a level of new possibilities through the use of vibration, frequency, and sound itself. Their civilization depended on the industry of what we will call the living waters. Their technological advancement enabled them to transform the entire Earth into a power grid. But this grid was only possible because of water. The civilization of the future was
I
an
guess the moon
electromagnetic
can
water
just
world.
do that. The moon can
Canals
just
are
hit the
no great secret.
firmament.
They are found everywhere across our realm, both the great and the small. Most of the great canals around our Earth are connected to the ocean. Salt water is an excellent conductor of electricity.
Okay.
Sodium chloride is ionized.
Sure.
We have the Corinth Canal, connected to the Aegean Sea. We have the Panama Canal that connects both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Suez Canal connects with the Mediterranean Sea. And there is the Volga-Don Canal, connecting the Azov Sea, Caspian Sea, and Black Sea with the major oceanic networks. All of the canals built before the 1920s were not built by us, or those in the history books. We inherited them. And while the official narrative tells us that the Volga-Don was finished during the 1950s, its construction actually began back in the 16th century. All narrative surrounding the construction of these canals is purely fabricated. And I will
Okay.
show you how much later in our journey.
Oh,
Once
much
you start paying
later.
attention,
We can't just get
becomes
into
very
it now.
evident that most continents and countries feature a combination of canals and rivers that span the entirety of the land itself. The citizens of the old world utilize the oceans and rivers to create a grid of interconnected waterways to provide water to all of their areas of habitation. In order to pass difficult sections and keep the supply going, they would build aqueducts and viaducts. Sometimes these were constructed with the
You know,
purpose of
I'm not
energizing
not
water as it
understanding. He
passed through
seems to be
and into different
backtracking
areas.
on the whole
And that is
world
why
is
many will
200
design
years old
symmetrical
thing.
archivolt structures. The Romans did not build these structures. The entire infrastructure of so many cities found across our realm are designed around canal systems. Look at Amsterdam from above.
Maybe
The
when
precise
he said
geometric
the world
lines
is
here are
200
not
years
roads.
old,
They are
he meant like
canals. And the sole purpose
metaphorically.
was to supply water from one area to another. The water was stored and manipulated for a
Minecraft.
variety of purposes we are already familiar with in our cities and towns. It was much,
But
much,
if all
much
of the
more.
water was
It way more
electric,
magnificent, impressive,
how are the
and
fish alive?
futuristic than we could even imagine. The grid was connected to central, bigger power stations, or what is more appropriately termed star stations. Sometimes these were isolated stations, and other times they comprised entire cities. We are going to have to fly to a higher altitude for this. I need to show you. Hold on tight now, and keep your eyes open. Look.
Okay. I'm looking. I'm keeping my eyes open. Yeah, all the fish are electric like eels. Or, you know, maybe the geometry isn't perfect, but from this distance you can't tell the difference if one side is like 5-10 meters off, you know? Okay, please stop. This is not this is not... I don't know why he's doing this. The suspense, the fucking, the rapid fucking cuts. Okay, I get it. Just keep explaining crazy shit
found
to me.
everywhere across our realm. These
Thank
star
you.
structures is almost beyond our comprehension. As you saw, they are found everywhere
He's
across our
trying to
realm,
say
with
fish
undeviating
noodles.
geometric consistency. A wondrous impossibility. Perhaps they had some kind of technology that allowed them to view huge areas of land from above while planning and building. They were never forts. That is a fairy tale invented by our controllers. The stunning geometric precision and symmetry of the star structures would most likely have functioned to enhance the power of the generators and to etherize the water, or turn the water into living, energized water. We can see from comparing some of these ruined sites, and some left a little more intact, that water would have been present throughout the structure. Before the controllers destroyed and drained most of these structures, they were full of water. They were connected to rivers and canals and the oceans. They were a key component of the entire power grid. The star structures are fractals of symmetrical geometry, just like many of the ceilings of these huge energy generators. And, like the acoustic cavity magnetrons and resonators, the symmetrical sharp diagonal walls would have caused the ions to perpetually vibrate.
What the
Old plans and illustrations, which have no doubt been edited or manipulated in some way or another, offer suggestion as to how complex, integrated, and essential the star geometry was to the entire grid. Look at Paris here. It isn't obvious at first glance, but upon closer inspection, we come to realize that the entirety of Paris was itself a star station, or a star city. And like with everything else constructed in the old world, these structures were once functional and a celebration of the source of their innovation. Look,
did moats just make it harder to siege and invade cities?
Closer at the star geometry here. Can you see the resemblance? The snowflake. Do you remember what happened in Masaru Emoto's experiment on water?
Yes, I know about the water
molecular
experiment.
structure. Those of the old world had perfected this science. They knew the key to releasing electromagnetism's potential was through sound and water. Just imagine what they were able to achieve. Sound, vibration, and frequency was just as integral to the success of their technology as water was. Those of the old world did not hide their adoration for sound. Traces of this love for sound are everywhere. These structures were literally instruments of power. Or as the so-called Goethe put it so succinctly elsewhere, music is liquid architecture. Architecture is frozen music. This is why so many generators, capacitors, power stations, and intermediates feature holes, pediments,
there were fish
indentations,
people.
and complex 3D ornamentation.
The people
They were
that
structural openings to manipulate
created
sound, the
Sasquatch
vibrations
did
and
also
acoustics, so they
create
could
a
tune the
race of
electromagnetic
lobster
energy
people.
in conjunction with the water in a variety of ways to achieve different results. They were similar to the aerophone instruments such as the flute, the pipe, the recorder, the bassoon, and the trumpet. The old world revered the geometry of the star because it was through the study of the stars in the waters above that they learned the power of fusing electromagnetism, vibration, and frequency with water itself.
What is
They all work
Miyamoto hiding?
harmoniously and in concert with one another. This interconnected and interdependent energetic relationship is what makes the stars and all life itself possible in the first place.
Mr. Nintendo
Look a little
himself.
closer at the dancing geometry of the sonoluminescent stars beyond the firmament. Do they remind you of something else? That's right. All of the magnetrons, or what we've come to call rose windows, were designed to mirror the cymatic patterns of ether's vibrations in water itself. Artist Tanya Harris was onto something in 2013 when she turned her attention to studying and recording the silent resonant frequency of churches. By placing water inside of a loudspeaker, she was able to discover the hidden geometry of these resonant frequencies. The results showed that even the silence within these structures produced strong cymatic patterns. And again, can you see the resemblance? Others have applied the same technique and studied the cymatic patterns displayed when bells chime along these structures.
I guess that's cool.
Look at the patterns. Magnetrons. This is why so many magnificent rose windows resemble cymatic patterns so closely. This is why they look like the petrified pulsations of a star. The entire ceilings of many cathedrals also mirror this sacred cymatic geometry. This is why so many of the structures contain huge bells and chiming clocks. The tolling bells would emit powerful vibrations and frequencies and influence an entire area's water supply. The sound would influence the molecular structure of the water, which was then used for a variety of purposes.
So why doesn't it still
all.
do that
Many
then?
of these structures also housed another wonder of the world, the king of sound, the organ. Have you ever stopped to look at some of the great organs before? These were not constructed by ordinary people in the 19th, 18th, 17th, and 16th centuries. Like the structures they reside in, they are a marvel of elegance and majesty. The most powerful sound instrument in the world. The specific organ sound waves of low and high frequencies would no doubt have enabled those of the old world to manipulate the ethereal energy in ways they saw fit. The magnetron rose windows that would not have contained glass would amplify these sound waves, which in turn would influence the molecular structure and properties of the etherized living water. Organs would have had multiple uses, perhaps providing entire towns with specific resonant frequencies for good health and prosperity. The specific functions of the organ have been deliberately hidden and withheld from our knowledge. Interestingly, the official history states that the first organs of the world were water organs, in which the power source pushing the air is derived by water from a natural source or by a manual pump. No doubt a deceptive half-truth disguising the instrument's true interaction with water. And like I said before, most of these structures had areas nearby to store.
So why don't you
and
just
hold
build
large
one,
quantities of
dude?
water. Many of the structures feature underground cavities or huge cisterns, some of which have been drained and some kept intact. Sometimes the cistern was located apart from and outside of the structure. The controllers have redesignated many of these areas as Roman baths. That's why Bath Cathedral in England is located right next to the Roman baths. The water was also stored in red brick power stations, capacitors, or water towers. Open rectangular sites, reservoirs, wells, and step wells. This is why step wells were constructed with precise geometric patterns. Again, the symmetrical structures here work to encourage oscillation or vibration of the ions.
Like, if you bought an acre of land, right? You could build this. You could do this yourself. You could do it. You could use all the modern tools and shit you wanted. You could make this a hobby. You could build it, and then you could harness the vibrational cymatic power spinner, whatever the fuck, and you could show us a video of you doing it, and then we wouldn't have to believe your crazy alternate history flat earth theory. We would just be able to go, whoa, he's building the thing. Yeah, if primitive technology, if that channel did it, why didn't theirs generate power?